This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
And we'll talk now with Brett Dolan from Touchdown Radio. And, of course, you know him from Razorback Sports Network, ESPN Plus coverage, SEC Plus coverage of everything Arkansas. And good to have you on here, Brett. You had a pretty interesting Ole Miss Georgia Tech game last weekend, and Iowa Penn State awaits you. So, yeah, always want to get the Iowa grad on the Iowa game, but I know we touched on it last week.
Yeah, the Iowa guy would prefer not to be on the Iowa game unless there's an upset, and they are a 15-point underdog, so I don't know if that'll take place. But, no, it's always good to go to Happy Valley. It's not easy to get there. It's really not easy to get back after 110,000 packed their way in. But we love college football for the spectacle and for the scene, and that ranks probably in the top 5 or 6 in the country for both of those.
Really looks like you had an interesting game in Oxford this past weekend. It was tight, then an explosive fourth quarter in which 37 points were scored, and it just must have to be kind of tough to keep up with it at that point.
A little bit. I mean, it was 10-3 at the half, and you look at the final score, and you probably forget the fact it was 10-3 Ole Miss at the half, and each team had a field goal blocked or partially blocked. It was not a masterpiece by any stretch. I will say, while Ole Miss certainly at the end of the game had the numbers that looked good, it didn't look good for 3.5 quarters. And Lane Kiffin isn't afraid to pad some numbers at the end. He's from the Ryan Day school of let's keep throwing bombs with 4 minutes left, and when someone picks up the paper the next day, they'll think we had a great offensive day. They did not. They did have a good finish, but when Georgia Tech kind of reached that tipping point where the game was over, then they just kind of stuck in a couple of late touchdowns. So I don't know how much credit I give Ole Miss, but obviously they'll have a fun game this weekend when they rattle into Tuscaloosa against a down Alabama team by their standards.
Brett, you got some big games all across college football this weekend. 2 of them that I'm looking at, and you got FSU at Clemson and Ole Miss at Alabama. Dabo Swinney, Nick Saban, both kind of on the hot seat. Which one of those coaches should be worried?
Ooh, maybe more Dabo than Nick, and obviously both of those guys have some equity in the bank. But Clemson just doesn't look like Clemson of old, and not that Alabama does. I think there's still talent for Alabama. I would still probably pick them over Ole Miss, even though their game last week at USF was just disgusting offensively. It was just terrible. And maybe with going back to Milroe, that'll alleviate some of those issues. But that was another game that was 10-3 late in the game against a really bad USF team. The reason I picked Clemson, Matt, is just because that first game against Duke, I don't know if any of us thought that Duke was going to win that game, and maybe they're better than we think, but it's still Duke and it's still ACC, and for them really not to show up and their quarterback play to look so bad is one thing. But I got to believe there's some Tiger fans that are going to watch DJU and what he's doing after transferring to Oregon State and think, why couldn't we get more out of this guy? They're getting something out of him, and we're going with Klubnik. We're struggling, and they have not played well. And quite honestly, you should be able to do better in the ACC than you do in the SEC. That's probably why I still give Nick the benefit of the doubt more so than Dabo.
Yeah, with Alabama and Clemson both having that loss early, it just all these games just get more magnified because if Alabama loses, Clemson loses, they're done. They're not making the Final Four.
100%. And quite honestly, this is a topic for another day. I like the 14 playoff. I'm not a fan of the 12-team playoff for that same thing. I think there's some urgency. Every game, whether it's September, whether it's October, they mean something. Next year, you might lose 2 games and be fine, or you have an opportunity to get your act together over the last half of the season. Not this year. So you're right. You lose that second game, and it changes the conversation. And not only for this year, but in the era we live in with kids transferring, it just gives them time to start thinking, I'm not playing for the Alabama I came to play for, or Clemson, or whatever. Maybe I need to start thinking about transferring, or the coaches flush guys. You're right. It does change everything, and it makes for just that level of chaos and urgency that I think we've really kind of enjoyed.
What do you think watching Pete Golding's defense at Ole Miss and how it's been different from what we'd seen in the last couple of years with Kiffin as the coach?
Yeah, better. That's the main thing. It is better. And I think in part, I don't think their offense is as good. I don't think Jackson Dart's playing terribly well. I think others might disagree. I've seen every freaking snap he's taken this year on tape or in person. It's not overwhelming. Their running game has been lackluster, but their defense has given them a chance, especially early when maybe, they fall behind in previous years and have to come racing back to win games. I mean, that was a tie game late at Tulane, and their defense scored a touchdown, and they got an offensive score, and the score probably didn't look like how tight the game actually was. And last week, again, 10-3 at the half. And Georgia Tech's not a juggernaut, but they have speed and they're better. But that defense is better. And I'll be curious to see how it holds up this week, because we might have an Ole Miss-Alabama tight game, but it might look different than past years. It may not be 38-35. It might be 21-20 or 2017, and that does give Ole Miss a chance. Because last year I had them, Phil, at the last game of the year in the Texas Bowl, and Texas Tech just bumped them. And as an SEC guy, I thought, well, Ole Miss will wear them down. They'll be better. They were terrible. Texas Tech just ran them out of Houston in the Texas Bowl. They had to make changes, and to Lane's credit, they figured out how to have at least a much more representative defense than past years.
So I saw you got Iowa Penn State this weekend. I'd seen, and it's funny to think about this, someone called the Steelers the Iowa of the NFL. Black and gold, have an offensive coordinator that their fan base despises, and just frankly have a lot of trouble scoring against good defenses. But 41 against West Michigan is going to be quite a bit different than going up against Penn State.
Well, it is, and here's the kicker, right? Cade McNamara came over from Michigan. He's 18-3 as a starter. He's a good quarterback. He might not be as good as J.J. McCarthy, really good. He's dealt with a quad issue. He has not been the same. It's been timing and rhythm and pushing off. He's not looked good. His best weapon catching the football, Luke Lachey, 4 touchdowns last year. Tight end, who's probably the next Iowa first-round tight end, broke his leg last week, which was awful. Iowa's top 2 running backs are not going to play. I have a feeling that's why it's a 15-point game. Penn State has not been dynamic either offensively, even though they seem to have weapons. But here's a great note, Phil. I was looking back at this rivalry, which has become a really good Big Ten grind-em-out game. Since 2000, Iowa's won 10, Penn State's won 7. Penn State's won 6 of the last 10. Iowa's won the last 2. But during that stretch, Iowa's averaged 20.5 points against Penn State. Penn State's averaged 19.7 against Iowa. So it's been one of these type games or rivalry games over the last couple of years, if not a little bit longer, that's been really close and fun. Whether we get a shootout, I don't think that'll be the case. But Iowa needs to make this a 17-14 type game to win, because they're not going to be able to put up 27 points or something like that.
Yeah, it's been pretty kind of even, I guess, with the Arkansas-LSU matchup a little bit the last couple games. Was it, Phil, the last 3 have been decided by 3 points? How does Arkansas keep it close this week, or do they have a chance to go into Baton Rouge and get a victory?
It's going to be tough. I think we all know that. I mean, LSU, we watched them that first week, and we thought, wow, this is going to be a great chance for Arkansas or other teams to kind of take LSU down a peg. Clearly, it looks like they've kind of righted their ship just a bit. I would say probably more so than ever, Arkansas needs to play well in the first half, and they can't be in a deficit scenario halfway through that second half. I think it's going to be hard to try and gather a lot of points late and come back. I do think this is going to be a close game. I could be wrong. I know the point spread doesn't probably indicate that. I'm with you, Matt. I think these games have been really good between these two teams over the last several years. But I think Arkansas clearly has their work cut out for them.
All right, we'll end on a totally different topic here. Brought up the other day. Do you see the story about Heston Kjerstad being pushed around the Orioles clubhouse during the celebration for the playoff clinch, dumping everything they could on him, literally everything? And I mean, olive oil, a smoothie, ranch dressing, Chick-fil-A sauce. That's with a lot of media in there, lots of cameras. Lots of phones acting as cameras, a lot of microphones. You and I have spent a lot of time working for minor league baseball teams, where every once in a while you get a team that is worthy of a big celebration on the clubhouse, and there's not a camera to be found. I've experienced a couple of those. I had some really bad minor league teams, so I would have liked to see more. Did you see any crazy celebrations in the minors?
We had one, but I'm going to have to take you back to 1994. You were just a pup back then, but this was in the Midwest League, and I think it was my second year doing minor league ball. We won the championship in Battle Creek, Michigan, and decided to leave coming back through the night. So the celebration in the clubhouse was pretty crazy, and our coaches decided they want to leave. They wanted to drive back to Wisconsin and be on their merry way for the off season. We stopped at a liquor store that was just about ready to close, and we convinced the guy not to because we had somewhere in the neighborhood, I don't know, several $1,000s worth of fine money, and we spent every single dollar at the liquor store and brought that back on the bus with us to Wisconsin. I would say when we rolled in at 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning, there were a lot of cabs called because nobody was in much shape to do anything, operating any heavy machinery. But whatever dollars figure we had left in the fine coffer accumulated over 5 months was spent in about 30 minutes in a Battle Creek, Michigan liquor store, and the party was on.
How long's the bus ride from Battle Creek to Beloit, Brett?
5.5, 6, long enough.
Long enough of a party. That's for sure.
Have a good party.
BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.